I did a general review of the Crooked Moon book, the Legends of Adrantris, first release on D&D Beyond. It's just a massive book full of incredible stuff, and I wanted to do a full review of the subclasses because I think they're just really incredible, and I want to show you that you should probably invest in them because it's worth it. So that means it's once again time for a cool transition. It's really not that cool of a transition. I'm aware that I could do effects on it or something, but here we are. I went through all of the level 3 stuff in my other video, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about that. I'm going to kind of summarize the features to get this flowing a little bit better because there's just a lot here. We are starting as ever with the B for Barbarian, at least until Artificer hits the SRD. Or they make something else, Angry Man class. I mean, that's kind of what the Barbarian is anyway. Anyway, Barbarian class here is part of the experiment. It's basically very Jekyll and Hyde vibed. You can have it so that your character was inflicted with this, or that they did it themselves if you want to go for a proper Jekyll and Hyde vibe. The level 3 features are alchemical experiments, where you get proficiency with alchemist supplies and you actually get a kit as well, and you can use those to make potions of healing, which is useful but probably not something that's going to come up in all of that many campaigns. The main feature though is the volatile serum, which lets you choose from 3 different forms, basically when you go into a rage, and you can also use a bonus action to change. You can do these as many times as you have rages, so you can actually change them as many times as you want, basically, as long as you are in rage. The short of this particular bit is Frenzy lets you ignore difficult terrain, which is great, and you can also activate the Cleave Mastery property when you hit with a melee weapon or unarmed strike. I still really like that particular one with a monk multi-class. You'd have to be a strength-based monk, but that's not the end of the world, because being able to cleave on every single punch you do unlocks a lot of potential power for the monk. The second one is Monstrosity, which makes you bigger, increases your reach as well. You can also add your rage damage bonus to your attack rolls, which allows you to potentially hit more too, which is great. And then Reconstruction allows you to heal by rolling your hit point die once at the start of each of your turns, basically. You do expend that die, but it's a great way to keep yourself alive. Most health with Barbarians is doubled, just by nature of the class having resistance to stuff, but that does stop working if you have acid or fire damage on that turn. It's great for flavour and just a nice way for Barbarians to self-sustain. Beyond that, and this is new territory, the level 6 feature for the Barbarian is Augmentation Compounds. It gives you a nice boost to your rage forms. It basically adds another 3 things to choose from whenever you enter your rage or choose a new serum. The first one is Stimulated Sentence, which gives you blind sight out to a range of 30 feet, and if you already have blind sight, it increases it by 30 feet. So that could be incredible if you're doing a blind fighting style build. Maddening Fumes means you get an emanation where it halves the enemy's speed within that 30-foot emanation, which is a lot, and they must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or have disadvantage against attack rolls against targets other than you. So it's a nice little tanking feature. And the final one is Corrosive Expulsion, which lets you swap one of your attacks out for a chemical spray of either a 15-foot cone or a 30-foot line. You get to choose a shape each time, so it's actually more flexible than a lot of these kind of things. And then you roll a d8 equal to your rage damage bonus. On a failed, the enemy takes acid damage equal to the target, equal to the rolled, and on a save they take half. Fairly standard, but very, very cool. An AoE for a Barbarian isn't something you see very often, so I would anticipate that one being pretty darn popular. Level 10, we get Reactive Catalyst, which has a lot of words. Your implants are now sensitive to your response to danger and flood you with stimulating chemicals. When you take damage or when you gain the blinded, deafened, poisoned, or stunned condition, you can use a reaction to enter your rage before the damage or conditions are applied. When you enter your rage, you end any of those conditions on yourself, including any triggering conditions. You also have advantage on Constitution saving throws. It's niche, but it's niche in a way where you might not use it most of the time, but on those rare occasions where you do use it, it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And then level 14 is the Biochemical Admixture. It lets you have 2 of your serums active at once, and along with that, if a creature within 5 feet of you damages you while your rage is active, they take 1d12 acid damage. They can only be taken once per turn. So a creature can only take that once per turn, but it's not a reaction to give that damage out, it just happens. That really helps out if you're doing a kind of a tanky build and kind of drawing everyone into yourself. The implant forms here is basically just some flavour suggestions, but I like that a lot. On the whole, I think this is a strong contender for one of the coolest concepts for a Barbarian. I don't know if it's the most powerful one, but I think it does a pretty good attempt at it. Being able to swap all of these things on the fly, basically every time you rage, and then on bonus actions and subsequent turns, allows you to really mess around with your role in the party, and more importantly, be a lot more flexible than barbarians generally are. Let's move on to our whistling bard, who uses magical whistles to summon haints, which are ghosts, basically. Level 3, you get handy haints. Basically, when you give a creature inspiration, you can grant them the Grump, Sad Sack, or Scamp haint, all of which have different effects. The Grump gives the inspired creature and allies within the aura advantage on intimidation checks and strength saving throws, and you can take a reaction to increase the damage that they do, basically. Interestingly, you can actually expend that whether it's the creature you've inspired or not, which leads to some interesting situations where you might be where you might be buffing your own damage. Sad Sack gives half cover against range attacks to any allies of the inspired creature and the inspired creature itself, and you can also take your reaction to reduce the damage that they take. Again, this is any creature within the aura, so it's actually really flexible. And then Scamp is speed increase, or you can let someone reroll a d20 as your reaction. And then level 3 is the ribbon feature. You can make a handy haversack, basically, and if you make a second one, all of the items in the first one come spilling out. I mentioned in my previous video that I think that's a really fun way to lay traps, and I stand by that. And you can also whistle instead of verbal components, which makes it harder for enemies to identify the spells you're casting. Level 6 again is new territory, and they're train themed, which is fun. I'll come up with my criticism of that in a minute. Okay, level 6 is Homeward Bound, and it basically allows you to get access to the teleportation circle spell early. When you take a long rest, you can leave a mark or that you can teleport to. You get whisked away by a ghost train if you choose to do so, and you can have a number of locations equal to your charisma modifier. If you do go beyond your maximum, you get to choose which of the old ones you get rid of. It's kind of like a fast travel system, that's pretty wonderful. And then when you hit level 9, you always have the spell. The other one is Ride the Rails. You can whistle as a magic action to summon a spectral train into existence, which hits a 120-foot long, 10-foot wide line from you, passes through objects and creatures. You and up to 6 willing creatures of your choice within 30 feet of it can hop onto it, and you would teleport to an unoccupied space of your choice in the line, and any creatures who accompanied you appear in the closest spaces next to you. So you can take your allies and zip off. Any other creature in the line must succeed in a DC saving throw or be deafened and pushed 10 feet away from the line's point of origin, as well as taking damage equal to 3 rolls of your bardic inspiration die. This damage is also psychic, which is super cool. And while you can only do it once per long rest, you can also spend a level 3 or higher spell slot to restore it. This is basically an incredibly flavorful new spell for the bard, which only they get to use. Its utility, its damage, and it's also CC, so crowd control a little bit too, which is, I mean, that's a lot. Level 14 is Last Stop. The ghostly shrill of your whistle now draws the living closer to the world of the dead. You can whistle, which can be heard 300 feet away. I wonder how easy that would actually be to do in real life. You can then choose up to 6 creatures within that range. They must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be cursed. So while they're cursed, if they take psychic damage, they gain the frighten condition towards the source of that damage until the end of its next turn. Then the first time a cursed target takes psychic damage, it has vulnerability to psychic damage, so you get to double your psychic damage once, which is really, really useful. And then they get to use saving throws. And again, you get all that once per long rest, or you can spend a level 7 spell slot. I really like this subclass, but it's sort of the only one I would struggle to fit into every campaign. Flavour is obviously free. Locomotives don't have to be locomotives. You could 100% reflavor them as being some weird magically infused horse and carriage, or a headless horseman, or whatever you want it to be. And I'm not disagreeing with that, but all of the features are literally tied to trains, which means that it's not going to fit in every setting as is. Again, flavour is free, not an issue, but it is worth noting. In terms of the abilities though, it's got a fair amount of flexibility, it's fairly straightforward, and it's reliable. And I think sometimes that's the most important thing a subclass can be. Harvest Domain Cleric is next. You get proficiency in either nature or survival, you gain a herbalism kit, and you can use it well. You get to choose sowing, growing, or reaping every short or long rest, and it grants access to different spell lists. As you can see, of the ones I know of the new spells, Culling Sickle is kind of like a necrotic spiritual weapon. and it also grants you temporary health, so that's really, really useful. You can also make food to help people gain more HP on a short rest, basically, which is what cornucopia is. Then I think I actually missed this in the first video. Bountiful Harvest grants you your Channel Divinity. It gives up to 6 creatures of your choice within 60 feet of you a heroic inspiration, but they can only get it once per long rest. Additionally, they get a bonus depending on... I'm very confused about how that's worded. Additionally, you grant all targets one of the following benefits. Your current harvest aspect is a different one. It changes to match the choice. So you can change your spells by expending a Channel Divinity. That's fantastic. So sowing here grants a number of temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus plus your wisdom modifier. That's generally going to be between like 5 and 10 most of the time. That's a lot still. That's potentially up to 6. So that's some allies. It's larger groups, or it's, find familiars and things like that. Growing is a mini bless. That would stack with Bless, so that's really, really useful. And then Reaping, the targets deal extra necrotic damage equal to your proficiency bonus. Level 6, we get Blessing of the Seasons. You can draw upon the powers of Harvest Cycle to potentially avert disaster. When something fails a saving throw, you can take a reaction to reroll it. So Sowing gives you Dex and Charisma, Growing gives you Con and Int, and Reaping gives you Wiz and Strength, which makes sense. Additionally, after the saving throw succeeds or fails, roll a number of d4s equal to proficiency bonus. The target regains hit points equal to that total roll. So you can potentially not only stop someone from failing a saving throw, Reaping... I mean, you've got 1 strong and 1 weak save, basically, on all of those, I would argue, which is great for balance. But yeah, resisting spells like Command is always high up on my list. But you also heal them, along with letting them succeed. So that's very solid. The final thing here is the Eternal Wheel. When you use your Bountiful Harvest, you can invoke the Ender Cycle of Life, Death, and Rebirth to grant yourself and the creatures affected by your Channel Divinity an additional benefit based on your current aspect. So this one doesn't let you change. You can when you Channel Divinity anyway, so it's kind of a non-issue. So that's worth noting. Sowing targets gain the effects of the Regenerate spell for a minute or until you lose concentration. So you do have to gain concentration. Do you have to take concentration on it, but you don't cast it? Or just if you're concentrating on something else? Right, so you just concentrate on the ability. Okay. Growing, gain advantage on saving throws and ability checks for an hour. And then Reaping is you gain resistance to necrotic, psychic, and poison damage for an hour. And then do this once per long rest, unless you use a level 7+ spell slot to restore it. I feel a similar way about this one as I do about the Barbarian, which is that this kind of on-the-fly customization and flexibility can be really, really useful in D&D. And when I say can be, I just mean is. It's nice to min-max, but it's also nice to be able to change what you're doing to fit the specific situations you're in. And that's what this lets you do. Also, you're a cleric, so you have access to cleric spells, which is just very strong. Next, we've got the 2 druids. So we'll start with Circle of the Old Ways, which remains my favourite subclass of the bunch, I think, based purely on flavour and just the vibes. You get druid spells. Again, spike growth is on there, so that's good. That is as complicated as my brain is when it comes to these things. Please be nice in the comments. Basically, when you cast Shillelagh, you get a shield, which is really, really cool, and you can ignore somatic components for your druid spells when you cast Shillelagh too. And the weapon that you enhance becomes your druid Phosis. Along with that, you can use a wild shape to boost yourself when you do this. Your AC becomes 10 plus your dex and wisdom modifiers. You can impose disadvantage on attack rolls on creatures you hit, and you get advantage on strength and constitution checks. Lasts for 10 minutes or until you dismiss it. Usual fine print. Oaken Thorn is at level 6. You gain an extra attack, which is lovely, obviously. How many druids get extra attack outside of the Moon Druid? Is it none? It might be none. That's pretty huge. Also, once on each of your turns, when you hit a melee roll with a weapon, they take an extra 1d6 piercing damage. It's really interesting that that isn't 1d6 of the weapon's damage, but I guess it's assuming you're using... I mean, you have to be using Shillelagh, so it has to be on a club or a quarterstaff, so theoretically that would be blunt, which makes sense. The extra 1d6 is nice, but it's only 1d6, so... But then you're hitting twice. If you can find a decent club or quarterstaff, then this class could potentially be absolutely fantastic, and obviously the DM should be facilitating you, because that's part of what a DM should do. Level 10, your Wood Woes, which is the special form you take, gains benefits. More benefits. Primeval Wrath, you can knock people over if they fail a strength save. Bramblebark, you can deal 1d8 to a creature, basically, if they hit you. And you also gain temp health equal to your wisdom modifier plus your proficiency bonus, which at the level 10 I mean, you should be pretty comfortably in the region of 10 health per turn is pretty huge. And then we've got the Ancient Protector, which is the final feature for the subclass. Again, this buffs your wood woes. So this is really all about Shillelagh and the special form that you can get. You become large and your reach increases by 5. That's always nice. You get resistance to bludgeoning and piercing, which combined with the 10 health from the previous feature is pretty strong. Shame it's not slashing too, but makes sense. Trees aren't great against slashing. And if you hit a creature that's covered in Elderwood sap, which you can do, and you hit them, if they're within your reach when they take an attack roll, you can use your reaction to attack them. This is a melee tank of a druid, which specializes not in creature forms, but in being a weird tree guy, and I adore it. I think it's probably strong enough. I am playing a Moon Druid in a campaign at the moment, and the Moon Druid is preposterous, so it's very hard for me to lower my expectations from that kind of level, but I do think that the Circle of the Old Ways is probably fairly solid, especially because you do get access to more magic items with this one. The other Druid is the Circle of Wicker, which can make little wicker things when you, as a wild shape, basically within 30 feet of yourself, which has an emanation, 30-foot emanation, which is filled with dim light. You get different things within this. Basically, you get to choose this whenever you create it. The first one is sacrifice, so you can use a reaction when a creature in the aura takes damage to deal fire damage to the creature, equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom. So this is actually, you want to put this near enemy creatures so you can deal extra damage to the enemy creatures, or your companions can. Soothe is about regaining hit points, which is always solid. You can only do this a number of times equal to twice your spellcasting ability modifier, which is probably enough for most fights. And then Ward is still probably my favorite. It just gives a +1 bonus to your allies. You just get a bunch of spells. Let's check out Summer Winds, because that is new. Unleash a blast of light and wind at a 15-foot cone. Your allies in the cone regain 2d6 hit points. Undead within the cone that are hostile to you. So it doesn't affect your undead friends, which is useful because there are undead species in this book. Those undead need to make a con save or take 2d6 radiant damage. Both the damage and the healing go up by 2d6 for every spell slot above level 2. It scales pretty well, and if you can consistently bring creatures together and also you're fighting a lot of undead, then it's a potentially very strong option. You can also create Wicker tokens, which let you cast any spells with a range of touch on creatures carrying those tokens. So it basically lets you cast Cure Wounds as though it was Healing Word, albeit as an action, not a bonus action. But that seems really very, very good. Level 6, the Wicker auras get a buff. The Sacrifice one goes to 2d8 instead of 1d8. The Soothe gains extra health. You can do extra health, and you can remove Charmed, Frightened, Paralyzed, Poisoned, or Stunned. And Ward allows you to give resistance to any damage type other than Force. You only choose one of them, but that's solid. If you know you're coming up against a Fire Dragon, giving everyone fire resistance is going to go down very well. Did I say Fire Dragon? Most of the dragons do fire stuff. That's not true. Red dragons. Level 10 lets you create a Soulbound Poppet, which lets you expend a use of your wild shape to create a Wicker doll that vaguely resembles a target within 60 feet of you. While the doll exists, the target has disadvantage on attack rolls against a creature carrying the doll, and when a creature carrying the doll damages the target for the first time, the target takes an extra 2d10 necrotic damage. This is a, lightning bolt that fish in particular kind of spell. It's very interesting, and you can give this doll to your friends, theoretically, which could make it a lot better. Like, you give this to a rogue, for example, maybe, and that would fit well. At level 14, the Effigy's auras get another boost. It's 3d8 for the damage. You automatically end Charmed or Frightened in the healing aura, and you give advantage on saving throws in the ward as well. So the ward now gives +1 AC, resistance to a damage type, and advantage on, let's say, dex saves. Solid. This is a really interesting support class. It's very much not going to be the star of the show, I would not think, most of the time, but it's one of those classes that's always going to be doing a lot in combat, even if it doesn't always feel like it. Barrowguard is the Death Knight subclass. It is the fighter subclass. You get Draugr Dice, which lets you do a bunch of stuff. It goes up as you level up. As a bonus action, you can summon a Ghostly Steed, which only you can mount. It has resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. It can't attack. It can just dash, disengage, or dodge. When it takes the dash, you can roll a Draugr Dice to improve the speed, basically, which is nice. Graveguard, when you take damage, you can take a reaction, expend a Draugr Dice to reduce the damage taken. It is also boosted by your con modifier as well as the roll. I said this before as well, this class really wants you to bolster your con, and I think that's awesome. And then Soul Reaper, when you take the attack action, you can forgo one of the attacks to basically hit at range to deal necrotic damage and also grapple the creature for a minute with ghostly hands. Again, this is based on your con modifier, which is nice to use your con modifier as an attack. Level 7 is Siphoning Souls. Mortal Coil is when an enemy that isn't a construct or undead dies within 30 feet of you, can take a reaction to regain one of your dice. And whenever you make an ability check, you can expend and roll a Drago dice and add the number to the rolled total. Tomb Castellan buffs the abilities you got at level 3. This is a theme throughout this book where you're getting stuff at level 3 and then those specific things get boosted as you go up, basically. So yeah, Phantom Charger lets you teleport if you would like to, and then each creature of your choice within 10 feet of where you appeared has to make a saving throw or take necrotic damage. Death Knell lets you not only stop damage, but deal half the damage back as psychic damage, and then the Soul Reaper power deals psychic damage equal to proficiency bonus at the start of the turn to the grappled creature. You can also take a reaction to add to that damage if you'd like to, but it's only equal to one roll of your Drago dice. There's no modifier involved in that, so that's probably going to be outclassed fairly quickly. Level 15, you are a Grave Lord. You are no longer a mere vessel for spectral energy, but a lord of it. When you use your Dark Rider power, when you use your Ghost Horse, you can allow one creature other than you to ride on the horse. That's really good if you're trying to get Cleric or a Bard out of harm's way. Additionally, when you make the special dash action, the creature can move through objects and creatures along with its riders as though it were difficult terrain. As ever, if it stops inside of a solid object, there is damage. Graveguard now lets you gain resistance to a damage type until the start of your next turn, which could be great if something's hitting you loads with fire, Scorching Ray or something. And then Death Grip means that any creature you grapple with your special attack also is now restrained. Level 18, this is the capstone of this one, you stop aging. You can't be magically aged, you don't die of old age, and you no longer require air, food, drink, or sleep. And you gain up to 3 Drago dice if you have fewer than 3 Drago dice when you roll initiative. That's interesting because it feels like it's not combat focused, really. Not unless you're getting a lot of fights per rest, which you might be. That's fine. But yeah, I love the flavour of this class a lot. I think what it does is really intriguing. I love the mounted combat feature. The player that used this one in the one-shot I ran over the weekend, I gave them a scythe, and the whole thing was just pure vibes in the best possible way. So, also, fighters are strong. So this is solid. The monk is up next, and as I said previously, I love that this is not a pure doing good to the world kind of monk. This is a sick cough-inducing monk. Level 3 gives you claws, so you can do slashing instead of bludgeoning damage with your unarmed strikes, and also you can deal extra damage equal to one roll of your martial arts dies when you flurry of blows. That's potentially a lot of damage, especially at higher levels. You can also expend a focus point when you're hitting a creature with an unarmed strike to curse them, which gives them the poison condition, and they take extra damage from your unarmed strikes equal to one roll of your martial arts die. If you want to, you can forego the extra damage dealt by your Claws of Pestilence to do the curse thing anyway. Otherwise, the Miasmic Plague costs a focus point. Focus points in the early game for a monk are stressful to use, so being able to ignore that, basically, is really cool. You get advantage on saving throws to avoid around the poison condition or magical contagions. You also get resistance to poison and necrotic damage. Resistance is always good. The ending of the poison condition is neither here nor there, because monks can do that anyway later on. At level 6, the plague within you becomes more virulent and deadly. When you deal necrotic or poison damage, you ignore resistance to those damage types, if any. You can also release a cloud of miasma on your enemies as a magic action. You can expend 2 force points to unleash a cloud of miasma in a 20-foot emanation originating from you. Each creature of your choice, so you don't have to hurt your friends, has to make a constitution saving throw. On a failed save, they take necrotic damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die, and they're cursed as if by your miasmic plague. Constitution saves are hard to beat. In D&D, many creatures have good con scores, especially as you get higher up in levels,
but if you can hit a lot of creatures with this, 2 focus points is not a bad price to pay. Level 11, you get Miasmic Contagion, which upgrades your Miasmic Plague. Constitution saving throws against your Plague are now at disadvantage. And when you expend 1 focus point to use your Step of the Wind, when you enter a space within 5 feet of any creature of your choice, it must succeed in a con save or be cursed by your Plague. We're all about the Plague here. Level 17 is Epidemic. Your Miasmic Plague ignores target's immunity to the poison condition, which is great because there are so many creatures immune to poison. That's not sarcasm, it's just how I sound. Additionally, when you deal necrotic damage to a target cursed by your Miasmic Plague, it takes extra necrotic damage equal to 1 roll of your martial arts die. I mean, we know what we're about. We're about poisoning things and being kind of ill, and as a theme, that's very solid. The abilities all very much go within that. There's not much for outside of combat in this subclass. It's something that monks can struggle with in general, but I mean, it seems fun. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it seems like it would be entertaining to build and build around. And while the immunity to poison condition doesn't come to level 17, which means a lot of lower level fiends and undead are still going to be immune to that, it's a nice little bonus. This is the 8th subclass, which means we are officially over halfway. Oath of Castigation is all about fire and punishment. We love to see it. Your Channel Divinity Castigate allows you to choose a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier. They have to make a strength save, and if they fail it, they are wrapped in fiery shackles and have their speed reduced to 0. Additionally, on foot, you can use your bonus action to deal extra damage, heat metal style, really, which is, I mean, that's solid. You can potentially lock down a bunch of creatures, and strength saving throws aren't always that good in terms of like creatures that can deal with those, so it has potential until later on. But insight gives you advantage on investigation and insight checks. You can also use a bonus action to choose a creature within 10 feet of you. They must succeed in a charisma saving throw or be frightened. While they're frightened, they can't lie. It's awesome. You get a bunch of spells. Let's check out Chain of Conviction. So Divine Favor, Inflict Wounds, Whole Person, new stuff. Counterspell. I still think Counterspell is really, really useful here. Locate creature because you're hunting specific things, and then Flame Strike and Hold Monster are both good. This is a bonus action spell in which you hurl a spectral barbed chain at a creature you can see within range. They make a strength saving throw. The failed save, they take 2d6 damage and are pulled 30 feet towards you, and they are bound by the chain. While bound by the chain, the creature is tethered to you and cannot move or teleport to a space that's more than 30 feet away from you, and you have advantage on attack rolls against that creature. On a successful save, the target only takes half the damage. Kindling Aura. You and your allies' aura within your aura of protection ignore resistance to fire and radiant damage. When an affected creature hits with a weapon attack, it can deal fire damage instead of the normal damage type. In addition, you and affected creatures in your aura can add your charisma modifier to intelligence, so in your investigation and insight checks. Being able to add your charisma mod to not only your checks, but also everyone else's checks is awesome, because both investigation and insight are generally quite useful in campaigns. And then the fire damage there is thematic, and there's a few cases in which being able to do that is going to be huge, especially because you can ignore the resistance to it. At level 15, you get Fervent Inquisitor. When a creature damages you or one of your allies within 30 feet of you that you can see, you can use your reaction to gain advantage on your next attack roll against the creature. You're just so vengeful. Additionally, when you deal fire or radiant damage to a bloodied creature, you become aware of any lies the creature has willingly and knowingly spoken to you in the last 24 hours. It literally lets you become better at torturing people. At level 20, this is the proper capstone. As a bonus action, you embody Cleansing Flame and gain the benefits below for 10 minutes or until you end them. Once you use this feature, you can't do it again until you use a long rest, or you can expend a level 5 spell slot. You gain immunity to fire damage. Lashes of Flame increase your reach by 10 feet, and your melee attacks ignore half and 3/4 cover. And when you hit with an opportunity attack, or when a hostile creature ends its turn within your reach, it must succeed on a charisma saving throw or have the prone condition and its speed reduced to 0 until the start of its next turn. You're just this beacon of suffering for the people that you want to beat up. I mean, the flavour here is so like archetypal and inspirational and classic in its designs. The fire burning things away is a vision I think a lot of us see in paladins, and I think this subclass does a really good job of capturing all of that. I'd kind of like if you got the special form earlier and then it got upgraded at level 20, but I think that's just me being picky. The ranger class is the Grim Harbinger, which is Harbinger. not Harbinger. I always used to think it was Harbinger. It's basically, well, it appears to be Beastmaster, but with Ghost Doggo. The new spell here is Intrusive Despair. You curse a creature within range, filling its mind with creeping paranoia and despair. When the target takes an attack or magic action, it must succeed in a wisdom saving throw or waste its action. Once it's saved 3 times, the spell ends. I mean, that's great. You can potentially stop a creature doing things for 3 turns. At level 3, you can deal extra 1d6 damage to a target within 90 feet of you. You basically target them with an Omen of Doom. The Grim appears. That still doesn't come up. There's the Grim stat block. These are relevant because it can do its other things with other abilities. You can replace your attacks with it and stuff. The Grim is friendly to you and your allies. It obeys your commands. It vanishes if you die. When the doomed creature dies, when it's reduced to 0, when you use this feature again. You can use this feature equal to the number of wisdom modifier. You gain all uses in a short long rest. You can also expend a test spell slot to restore an expended use. I mean, that's all fairly standard. In combat, the Grim acts during your turn. It can use its reaction and move on its own, but can only take the dodge action unless you use a bonus action to command it to take an action in its stat block or some other action. You can also command it as part of the bonus action to use Omen of Doom. As part of the bonus action you use. Okay, so you get to Omen of Doom someone and also get it to attack someone. Or you can sacrifice one of your attacks when you take the attack action to have the Grim take the Ominous Rend action. If you have the incapacitated condition, it acts on its own and is not limited to the dodge action. So if you're incapacitated, you just sort of get to control the dog for a bit, which is pretty cool. Ominous Rend, let's see, spell modifier 1d6 plus 3 plus your wisdom modifier and necrotic damage. If the target is a creature, it has the frightened condition. There's no save against that, so it just is frightened until your next turn if you hit. Level 7, you get better at it, deals extra 1d6 damage. I was going to talk about that, don't have to anymore. When you do damage to a creature, when you deal damage to a creature doomed by your Omen of Doom, you can change the damage type to necrotic, and necrotic damage dealt by you or the Grim ignores resistance. All in on necrotic damage. Level 11, the Grim gains resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. You gain resistance to necrotic damage, and when the target of your Omen Doom succeeds on a saving throw, you can take a reaction to force it to reroll with disadvantage and use the new roll. Once you cause a save to fail with this, you can't do it again until the current Omen of Doom ends. You really get to just hammer in on one creature, and because you can Omen of Doom and theoretically Hunter's Mark or another concentration spell at the same time, all of this does add up pretty well. It is worth noting that the Grim cannot benefit from your Hunter's Mark though, so I actually feel as though this class wants you to not use Hunter's Mark, which is at odds with Ranger class. There's no mention of Hunter's Mark in this class, which means that the Grim can't benefit from it. Let's finish it, and then I'll share my thoughts. The strength, level 15, is Sealed Fate. Ominous Rend deals an additional 1d6 of damage, so it's 2d6 extra damage, which means it's 3d6 plus modifiers. That's not bad at all. When you use Omen of Doom, you can force the target to make a charisma saving throw on a failed save. Until the current Omen of Doom ends, the target has vulnerability to damage dealt by the Grim and to the extra damage you deal with Omen of Doom. Once you use this benefit, you can't do it until spell slot. The subclass is... I stand by the subclass is Beastmaster, but with a ghost dog, and that's awesome. I think the additions it makes help to buff the Ranger up a bit into being more competitive. However, because the Grim cannot benefit from your Hunter's Mark as written, it renders moot a lot of the stuff that you get as being a Ranger until level 20. So this could be a subclass you would only take to level 15, and then maybe you would take fighter levels or something along those lines. 5 levels is a lot to play with, so that's not the end of the world, but I do think it's worth noting. That's less an issue with the subclass, more an issue with the Ranger as a whole. I have a video on that. Basically, yeah, I would probably rule it that the Grim can use your Hunter's Mark damage, or at least give an item that allows that to be the case with attunement, because then the players can decide if that's something they're interested in. But overall, it's a ghost dog. Next we have the Rogue class, the Sinner, which is a Hexy boy. When you do damage to a creature with a sneak attack, you can unleash the power of your Jinx craft, which allows you to designate 2 of the dice to roll on a Jinx table, and that gives them different things. You can do this equal to your Charisma modifier. So you want to be a Charisma Rogue, which means this is not the first Charisma class Rogue. Anyway, I think actually rogues in general benefit from some charisma because a lot of them can end up as the face of the party, but that's a whole other thing. You also get proficiency with 2 gaming sets of your choice, and you can basically have a hex weapon. You get a Jinx weapon, which changes the force damage until normal damage, and you can either summon a pistol or you summon a gaming set and throw cards or dice or chess pieces or Dungeons and Dragons minis at enemies to deal the damage. The Jinxes are obviously relevant. It is a bell curve because it is 2d6. Does everything from frightened condition to extra damage to dropping what they're holding, the halving speed, all sorts of generally good stuff. Level 9, when you use the Hex Slinger, you siphon away a sliver of the target's luck. You gain Heroic Inspiration if you don't already have it. If you do already have it, you can expend Heroic Inspiration instead of expending your use of Hex Slinger. At level 13, you get Pick Your Poison. When you use Hex Slinger, you can roll the designated sneak attack dice twice and choose which total to use. If the roll you choose is the same number on both dice, the target takes damage, psychic damage equal to half your level. That is half your level, not half your rogue level. Worth noting. If the roll you choose is a 2 or a 12, you do not expend that use of Hex Slinger. It's worth noting you don't spend the Jinxcraft dice you don't like expend them and waste the damage. You still get to do the damage. You just have to choose 2 of them. And then the final form is the other side, which has 2 things. Crossroads Devilry. When you miss with an attack roll or fail a saving throw, you can expend and roll any number of your sneak attack dice. You choose a number before you roll and add the total to your attack or save, potentially turning a miss into a hit or a failure into a success. Expended dice return to you after your next use of sneak attack. So actually you're borrowing them from your next sneak attack. And Lady Luck Smiling. When a creature hits you with an attack roll, you can expend sneak attack dice once again to up your AC. Again, same rules. It makes you better at not taking damage, which is an interesting aspect of things. I think the Sinner is full of flavour. I think it might be weaker than some of the other subclasses, but you do get to throw, letter Scrabble pieces or something at your enemies if you want to, so maybe that's worth it. Crimson Sorcerer was the other subclass used over the weekend by one of my players. It seems like it is a blast. It is obviously a blood sorcerer. You get a blood well, which you can use to empower your magic and fuel other powers. When you deal damage or restore hit points to a creature, you can expend it to add 1d8 to the total of one target. You get this back when you finish a long rest or when a creature takes 10 or more necrotic damage from you at a time. You get a bunch of spells, and the most important one of these is undoubtedly Blood Sacrifice. Blood Sacrifice is a bonus action. It's a 2nd level spell. You sacrifice a portion of your life to enhance your magical power. When you cast this spell, you take 1d6 necrotic damage. It is worth noting that you could recharge your blood well from this because it does not specify the creature has to be an enemy. That damage cannot be reduced or prevented in any way. For the duration of the spell, which is a minute, when you cast a spell that deals damage, one target of the spell of your choice takes an extra 1d6 damage of the same type as the spell's normal damage type, your choice if there are multiple. So you get extra d6. If you upcast this, you get an extra d6 for every level. So you can, if you choose to do so, cast this at 5th level. You would get 4 dice there to roll, and then you would be able to add 4d6 to spells you cast. This includes cantrips, I believe, because that is casting a spell. So you can massively boost your cantrips, which is pretty cool. The way it's phrased means that there's some DM interpretation with this. There are some spells which have damage as part of their effect, but do not deal damage as such. Level 6, you can turn into a pool of blood. You can expend your blood well and use a bonus action to turn into a pool of blood along with everything you're wearing or carrying for 1 hour. Carrying is useful. Could be fun for roleplay stuff. Transformation ends early if you drop to 0 points or if you choose to end it. Your speed becomes 10 feet. You gain climb and swim speeds equal to your speed, so just 10 feet. You have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. You have immunity to the prone condition. You have advantage on strength, dex, and constitution saves. You pass through small holes. You can enter and occupy the space of another creature. You can't use stuff, and you can't talk or cast spells. It's a good get out of free thing. It's a great one if you've got a concentration spell going, because obviously you can still do that. It doesn't say anything about using magic actions or to like move Moonbeam or a spell that would fit actually in this class. You also get Scarlet Vigor. You gain resistance to necrotic damage. In addition, when you finish a short rest, you can expend your blood well to reduce your exhaustion by 1. Not sure how useful the latter part of that will be, but it's resistance to necrotic damage is definitely worth it. Level 14, you can feed on your own life essence to fuel your magic. As a bonus action, you can expend a hit die, and choose one of the following benefits. You regain the use of your blood well, and you can expend your blood well to make the next meta magic option you use this turn cost no sorcery points. That seems pretty strong. I'm going to stop doing the accent now. It's all part of the vibe. I do think blood sacrifice might be sort of half carrying this class in terms of the actual flavour of it, but that's just me. And then level 18 is Sanguine Feast. Your hunger for vital essence is unquenchable. As a magic action, you can unleash tendrils of blood that lash any creatures of your choice within 30 feet of you. Any creatures. As many as you want. Targets must make Constitution saving throws, taking 5d8 on a failed save, half that on a successful one. If you've already expended this when you do this, the targets have disadvantage on the saving throw. If at least one creature takes damage from this, you regain hit points equal to the damage roll. Once you use this feature, you can't do this again until a long rest unless you spend 5 points to get it back. If you're playing, this is fun, if you're playing a character from a species that lacks blood in the traditional sense, you can still take the Crimson Sorcery subclass. The essence of Crimson Sorcery is life force, or animating energy that approximates life. I mean, this subclass is really interesting. It's got a lot of, it's full of flavour. Sangromancy is a classic, right? It's in a lot of the third-party books, and I think this does do a really good job of it. Being able to just plop into a puddle of blood is some classic Alex Mack stylings, and I really like the bit of flavour at the end there, is talking about how you can play this class even if you don't have blood. We are nearing the end. We have 2 Warlocks and 2 Wizards to go. The first Warlock is the Jokester one, the Grateful Patron. You get spells. Puppet Master is the new spell here. It's a 4th level spell. You get it at level 7. 60-foot range, concentration, 1 minute. One creature within range you can see must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or have the charmed condition. Magical marionette strings attached to the charmed creature's limbs or body, and it must use its action on its turn to make a melee attack against a creature other than itself that you mentally choose, moving the target to reach if necessary. The target can act normally on its turns if you don't choose another creature, or if the creature isn't within target's reach after it moves. The target repeats the save at the end of each of its turns. On later turns, you must use a bonus action in order to maintain control. There is 1 minute concentration, but you do still have to spend your bonus action. Killing Joke lets you use Vicious Mockery as a reaction to something taking damage or failing a saving throw. More Vicious Mocking is funny, especially if you're a player that really enjoys, or a DM that really enjoys creative insults for the things that you're targeting. Level 6, you get Jester's Japes. By calling down an aspect of the Grateful, you can curse your foes. As a magic action, you can target a creature you can see within 60 feet of you and make it do a charisma saving throw or suffer one of the following curses. You do get to choose. You can blind them, you can halve their speed and give them disadvantage on ability checks or saving throws that rely on dexterity. They have to make weird noises, which means they can't be invisible. Any weapon or unarmed strike the creature makes takes on a comical appearance as if they're made of wood, stuffed cloth, or balloons. They deal half damage with weapon attacks and strikes. The curse lasts for a minute, and they get to try and save against it every turn. Mocking Banter is the level 10 feature. Your witty and insulting japes become biting to the point of needling your foe's very psyche. When a creature takes damage from you can use a reaction to force the creature to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the creature takes psychic damage equal to the triggering damage you took, or half as much on the successful one. You can damage them back, basically. And then Send in the Clowns is level 14. You call upon the jeering, laughing, jeering spirits of the followers of the Great Fool to strike down your foes. As a magic action, you summon 3 ghostly fools. They are translucent and intangible and resemble clowns, jesters, or similar entertainers. Make up to 3 melee spell attacks against creatures within 60 feet of you. On a hit, the target takes 2d6 damage and is frightened until its next turn, or made prone. You get to choose. You can use an action on your subsequent turns to repeat this attack. The fools remain for 1 minute or until you have the incapacitated condition or die. I mean, that's a lot of attacks, potentially. I think this could go further in terms of like the slapstick feel of things, but I guess they're going for more of a menacing kind of clown, so it makes sense. The other Warlock is the Horned King. This is the like sort of druidy one, because again, spike growth. When you finish a long rest, so Witch Mark lets you basically put a spell in a stone and then someone else can cast that as long as it takes an action to cast. They use your stats for the cast as well, so it could be a lot of fun. You also get Malediction. As a magic action, you can curse a creature you can see within 60 feet of you until the end of its next turn. Alternatively, when a creature within range targets you with an attack roll or a spell, you can use a reaction to curse the creature with one of the below curses. You can give the creature disadvantage on its next attack roll or constitution saving throw to maintain concentration. It's up to you which one you choose. The target has disadvantage on its next intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw. Again, that's up to you. And the next time the target takes damage, it takes an extra 1d10 necrotic, and it can't regain hit points until the end of its next turn. The saving throw one there is probably the strongest one, but they will all have their uses, I'm sure. Spiteful Curse at level 6 lets you use Bestow Curse when you use Malediction without casting a spell slot. You can only do it once. If the target succeeds against a saving throw against a spell, your use of the feature isn't expended, so you don't waste. When you cast the spell in this way, its range becomes 60 feet. It lasts with 1 minute with no concentration required, and if the target succeeds on its saving throw against the spell, choose one of the malediction curses, and the target suffers that curse instead. So you can upgrade your malediction to bestow curse, and you don't use it if it fails. So that's just all around positive. Level 10, we get Crown of Horns. As a bonus action, you can manifest the majestic might of the Horn King for 1 minute. For the duration, a visible mark appears on you. Once you use this bonus action, you can't do it again until a long rest or spend a pack magic slot. Dark Heart. Once on each of your turns, when you damage a creature, the creature takes an additional 1d8 necrotic damage. King of All, you radiate a 20-foot emanation. When you activate this feature and at the start of each of your turns, you can choose a creature you can see within the aura. The target must succeed on a charisma saving throw against your spell save DC or suffer one of the following effects. We've got yet more curses. You can charm someone, they get disadvantage on attacks and ability checks. That's probably the right one. The target has the frightened condition and must move away from you by the safest route. And then at level 14, you can do a 1-hour ritual, which can be done during a rest, forming a bond with up to 6 willing creatures that must remain within 10 feet of you during the ritual. Witchcraft. Choose one of the curses from your malediction feature. The bonded creatures can now use that reaction option once, so you can kind of let them use your abilities. As a bonus action, choose one of the bonded creatures. If you and the target are on the same plane of existence, you magically teleport next to them. And then, while your Crown of Horns feature is active, the first time a bonded creature damages another creature, that target takes 1d10 necrotic. This is like a support warlock, but this is like a debuff support warlock. This is a really fun design space, and one I feel like we don't see much of in terms of just pure subclass, and certainly not within the Warlock. I like it. I don't know how strong it is. It's really hard for me to evaluate curses, but it seems like it could be interesting. Right, it's definitely interesting. It seems like it could be pretty strong. Our penultimate class is the Occultist. In your study of prescribed power, you learn deep speech or another language of your choice, and you get a Warlock spell. You can change your chosen spell whenever you finish a long rest. I'm simply not going to read all of that to you, but basically you have an intrusion die which becomes larger if you keep failing and smaller if you keep succeeding, and eventually you will have an intrusion. The intrusions do things. You can also risk an intrusion on purpose, basically, whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot to give a target of the spell disadvantage on the first saving throw against it, or give yourself advantage, a little bit like innate sorcery. The intrusions are all of these. Again, I'm not going to read every single one of these because there's just so much of it. The 12 one, if you roll a d12 on it, you have to be level 17 to get the level 12, basically. But basically, some of them are bad, some of them are bad in ways in which it could affect other people too. It's mostly bad for you though, including things like an aberration or a fiend equal to with a CR equal to a wizarding level or lower appears in an occupied space and might be helpful or might be a hindrance. I mean, that's fun for the DM. Level 6, choose a spell of level 3 or lower on the Warlock spell list. You always have that spell prepared. You can change your chosen spell on a long rest. When you cast the spell, you can risk intrusion to remove the need to concentrate on it. I mean, that's really strong. You can cause an automatic intrusion to cast the spell once without a spell slot. Warlock spell without concentration is preposterous. Probably worth being blinded or frightened or basically any of these other ones. There's a reason concentration exists. Level 10, Occult Presence. When you cause an intrusion, you can roll twice on the table and choose which one you want, and you can negate the intrusion by gaining an exhaustion level. Additionally, you gain one of the benefits below, and you can change the benefit when you finish a long rest. As a bonus action, you can cause an automatic intrusion and increase the dice size up to one step, up to its starting size, to change your chosen benefit. You can gain immunity to the charmed and frightened conditions you can't be possessed, gain resistance to necrotic and psychic damage, and you gain a fly speed. And then level 14, you always have the scrying spell. When scrying, you can risk intrusion to either treat your connection to a target creature as if you have part of its body. Right. Okay, so when you're scrying on someone, you can treat your connection to our target creature as if you have part of its body, and you can use it as an action instead of a normal casting. So you could do it in combat. When you cast scrying during the spell's duration, you can cause an automatic intrusion to teleport yourself, any willing creatures within 10 feet of you, to unoccupied spaces you can see through the sensor. That is an absurd way to exit a fight. Or get into one, because you could scry on an ally and suddenly be with them if you split the party. The Occultist is a Warlock flavoured wizard. I really like that as a theme. It is also so complicated, at least on first look. I'm sure it makes more sense if you play it. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. Because basically, so you can end up with a D2, and then theoretically, if you roll a 1, yeah, it's really complicated. I think basically you get access to more of these as you go, and the more often, by forcing intrusions, you get access to some of these other effects, which is an interesting way of doing things. It's a very high risk, high reward style of play. The 14th level feature might just make it worth it, because you can teleport anywhere on the same plane of existence. And then the final subclass is the Philosopher, which I'm told is loosely based on Full Metal Alchemist. You gain alchemist supplies, you have proficiency with it, and you can use it as an arcane focus, and you can use that to craft magic items. You also get Dissolution, which deals damage to creatures or objects, and if anything is killed with that, basically, they turn into a 1 ounce crystalline powder called quintessence. And then use that quintessence to serve as material components for your spells. You can use quintessence in lieu of money to scribe spells into your books or to craft magic items. And you can also expend one quintessence when casting a spell to change the damage type to force. Level 6 is Albedo. You can purify quintessence to amplify your spells. When you cast a spell using a spell slot, you can expend 1 quintessence to increase the level of the spell by 1 up to level 9. Maximum quintessence you can expend this way on a given spell is half your proficiency bonus. So you still only have access to the same level spells that you have, so you could boost the potency of your spells doing this. That's great. Level 10 is Citrinitas. You can now manipulate quintessence to create, not merely purify. You always have the creation of fabricate spells prepared, and you can cast each one once without expending a spell slot once per long rest. When you cast a spell using this feature, you can cast the spell as an action rather than its normal casting time. You can also cast them using spell slots to the appropriate level. Additionally, when you cast creation, you expend a number of quintessence up to your intelligence modifier to multiply the spell duration by 1 plus the amount expended. And then level 14 is Rubedo, which is the final feature of this. The combination of your great work, you can now distill your perfected knowledge of existence into a physical form. When you finish a short or long rest, you can expend 10 quintessence to create a Philosopher's Stone, a translucent red crystal. It is a tiny magical object with an AC of 19, a HP of 20, and immunity to all damage except force. If you create a second one, the first one vanishes. While carrying the stone, you get the following benefits. When you cast a spell, you can expend up to 2 quintessence as an additional material component to increase the spell save DC. That's pretty nice. When you equivalent exchange, when you fail a saving throw, you can take a reaction to spend 5 quintessence to succeed instead. You stop aging and can't die from old age, and the stone counts as part of your body for the purpose of the scrying spell and for spells that restore your life if you die. The stone itself serves as the material component for any spell and is destroyed when the spell is cast. Now, you can only get, you have to be breaking stuff down using the dissolution cantrip pretty much constantly. So you're going to always be looking for little rocks to break down. But the payoff for doing that is pretty sizable. Yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating subclass. I think wizard subclasses suck. Generally speaking, I think they are the least inspiring group of subclasses in D&D, and it's not close. So both of these feel like big wins in terms of that. I really like both of the wizard subclasses. I think they're wonderful. I think this is a wonderful collection of subclasses. For the most part, they're all wins. I don't think any of them are overtly more powerful than anything else in the game, which is always really important. I think balance is a big worry for a lot of DMs. And then any player not taking these isn't going to feel bad for not taking these. That is it. This is going to be a long old video. Judging by how long it's taken me to record this. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I will be doing more reviews and subclass reviews. I'd also love to start doing some build concepts for some of these subclasses because I think they're wonderful and it's fun to do. So if you'd be interested in that, please let me know. Other than that, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.